Welcome back at the Lodge with Jim and Michelle, a podcast celebrating life spent in the great outdoors. Whether you're an angler, a hunter, trapper, or someone just enjoying an active outdoors lifestyle, this show is for you. Join Jim Broughton and Michelle Sherman as they discuss outdoor news, opinions, events, and much more occurring over recent weeks. It's time now to pull up a chair, pour a favorite beverage, gather close to the campfire, and kick up those tired feet and relax, because you're back at the Lodge.
We're back at the Lodge with Jim and Michelle, and today we're at the Minnesota DNR.
Hey, hey, hey.
That's right.
Hey, fans.
You know,
fans.
I should point out something here, Michelle.
Yeah.
When I say back at the Lodge with Jim and Michelle...
Why are you first?
Well, is it age before beauty, or is that just the way that we had our logo designed?
I think it was the way the logo was designed.
So I don't want people to think I'm always putting myself first on this deal here, but that's just kind of the way we were doing it.
Yeah.
But today we have a couple of special guests at the DNR, and one of them is real shy around microphones. He hasn't been around much in his career.
Minnesotans may have never heard his voice. I don't know.
I'm being quite sarcastic about that. Mike, I'm going to let you introduce yourself here and tell us a little bit about your position here at the DNR.
Well, Mike Cold Front Kurre here, and if you haven't heard me before, I don't know how. I've been everywhere and no place all at the same time, but I'm the mentoring program coordinator along with being the record fish coordinator. In other words, we both have, the big monsters are being caught out there, those sturgeon and muskies later on this year. And, of course, the Governor's Fishing Open are coming up right now. So looking for some trophies out there. You know, I'm the one that you're going to have to go through at some point in time on that.
Has that always been your duty, or is that something that you just took on here recently?
Oh, the last 3-4 years.
Okay.
And at some point in time, I'm going to twist your arm. We're going to have to talk about record fish a little bit more, too. We've got a new length program that we can save for another podcast. How's that?
Great.
Okay.
Sure.
But right now, it's all about mentoring, getting kids and families into the outdoors, and that's part of my duties, along with sharing my expertise in the outdoors, just like you both do. And we appreciate being able to have the opportunity to talk today. And talking outdoors, that's our favorite thing to do.
And Mike, you've been with the DNR doing it in this capacity for how many years
I've got 8 years with the DNR, and I've been 25 years in the outdoor business, trying to keep people like you in business.
That's right.
In line.
That's right.
In line too. I am the sergeant at arms occasionally too. So,
well, great. We'll have some good discussion about that. We'll talk specifically what's going on in Minnesota, but some of this is going to relate to anywhere in the country because we've got listeners all over. So when it comes to mentoring for the outdoors, it's pretty applicable throughout.
Absolutely. I noticed, but you asked me first. Is this just like Jim and Michelle? And it's going to be like Mike and Deb here now too?
Beauty.
There we go. So we should talk to Deb Byer, my boss, first. Really?
Yes, we're going to talk to your boss, believe me. Go ahead, Deb, introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I am relatively new to the Minnesota DNR and happy to be in this position, and I get to work with a lot of great people like Mike. We've got 7 folks here in central office in St. Paul that work on a variety of different aspects with hunter and angler recruitment and retention and marketing of licenses and so forth.
Cool.
And so I get to work on behind-the-scenes kinds of things, planning and budgeting and trying to keep all the dots connected. But
so we could actually look at this as being a little bit of a performance review for Mike.
Exactly.
Wow.
I think this would be great. We've never done one of them before, Michelle.
No, I like it already.
I've got my notepad here.
Yeah, I like it already. So you said you're relatively new. How long have you been here at the DNR?
Just about 8 months.
Oh.
So
You can't see this, but though I think the check is in the mail.
We expect it to bounce, but it is in the mail.
Ouch.
And what did you do before coming here?
I actually was with the University of Wisconsin Extension as a natural resources educator.
Oh,
and
okay.
I've been there and have worked for a variety of state agencies and federal agencies throughout my career. So Wisconsin DNR, Missouri Department of Conservation, U.S. Forest Service here in northern Minnesota way back before graduate school even. So,
wow. So are you hunter, angler?
I am an angler, and I consider myself to be an assistant hunter with my husband and my son, and so I'm working my way along that continuum that we try to move whoever is interested in getting into hunting and angling.
Now, let's clarify something here. When we're talking about mentoring, we're not talking mentoring just youth, correct? The mentoring can be anybody that wants to get into the outdoors, no matter what the age is.
Yeah, I think you just hit on a big note here, Jim, because really, we used to think of kids, get the kids involved, and everybody will follow, because that's everybody's passion. They want to see the kids come up. But what we've missed, though, is really getting the family involved. We've missed generations of duck hunters right now because the older guys like I'll use myself as an example, gray-haired guy. Some of us have not returned that to even our own family. And have duck hunting as a tradition. We really missed the boat, and pun intended on that, where we've missed a generation out there. So really, if you get mom or dad involved with the outdoors, teach them. It's an automatic that the kids will come along at that point in time. So we've changed our focus a little bit on the mentoring. Getting the kids involved is good. It's a feel good. But if you get mom and dad involved, they're the ones with the money. They're the ones that can get you to travel wherever you need to be. But they also hold the schedules. And one of the things that now poor kids are scheduled 24/7, 365, and it is a challenge now to get the outdoors to be a priority.
Now, one of the other things, and I'm not sure if the DNR does anything regarding this, but I've noticed that as sportsmen grow older, there isn't much emphasis on trying to keep these people active, because they may need some assistance getting to a deer stand, or they may need assistance getting in and out of a boat. And I see that there are sportsmen that probably drop out of the ranks a little earlier. Does the DNR do anything on the opposite end of the spectrum to encourage people to, hey, let's not forget about Grandpa here? He still has the ability to do some of this stuff, but might need some assistance getting involved.
Yeah, Grandpa's really important. Grandma, very important. My parents were forever introducing people to the outdoors and us as kids, and we don't want to forget that. There are some programs, not specifically to the DNR, but there are some, like the pontoon boats that are being done across the state that are really focusing in on the seniors that are out there and getting them out there. But and there's the other way that you can get the older generations out there is to make it more or easier for them to get a license out there. So there are some definite age restrictions that you don't need that big spending money, because, boy, quite frankly, all of us right now are tight on the pocketbook, and so having easy access to licenses at a reduced price is really helpful too. And that's the same thing we do with the kids. But Jim, to answer your question, probably no, there is not as much for that group. And really, I think if we could just energize them to share what they already know about the outdoors and share it with their family or somebody outside the family, that they really need to take the first step by themselves. And this, in the whole bigger picture of things, we can do a lot of things at the DNR. But you know what? It still comes down to the family unit. And if it's grandpa or grandma that need to share it with their family or somebody down in the neighborhood, really, they can do a whole lot more than what we can do.
Well, that's just it. I mean, as I grow older and see that some of these things can become more challenging in the years to come, that's one of the things when you're in the twilight of your life, you don't look forward to giving up things that you've enjoyed throughout your life and created a lot of memories in that. And I guess I don't see a lot of emphasis in trying to encourage families, let's make a deer stand that's easily accessible and something that doesn't have to be climbed, or put out some ground blinds that people that just cannot climb trees anymore can get in when you're in your hunting group. And I was just curious if there's ever been any thought to encouraging some of that, because those people are still in the hunting ranks, and if they're not participating, they're not buying licenses and they're not doing some of these other things too. So
yeah, Deb could talk a little bit about what we're doing with the Learn to Hunt program that Jay Johnson is working on, working with adults instead of just the kids.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So we have some programs that focus on adults, maybe not that older range of the spectrum, but adults in general. And so people who go through those programs, which tend to be pretty intensive, you learn all different aspects of the biology of the animal as well as different hunting techniques and actually practicing and building up those skills and ending with an actual mentored hunt. But 100% of those participants go out of that program feeling much better informed and able than they were when they went into the program. And follow-up surveys have shown that 60% of those participants actually follow through and purchase a license within a year of going through that program. So that's one example of really some pretty intensive programming that we are involved with that requires a lot of time and effort on the part of our staff as well as the participants.
Yeah, because how do you target these people? Like, how do you target these adults who want to learn how to hunt?
I think that's the big challenge. I mean, that's
Well,
They're out there.
Yeah,
They're
the
out
group
there.
we just worked with is a locavore group of, from a co-op down here in the city. And we had 10 of them that went through a adult deer hunt, again, A to Z on that. They were taken out by experienced hunters, deer hunters. We were able to use St. Croix State Park as our playground, so to speak, out there. And these both
Was it bow or rifle?
This was in this case it was rifle. It was either one. One deer was harvested, but I tell you what, the excitement, and they were so intense about when we were taking care of the deer, when they were they were gutting it. And they wanted to know, how do you do this? How do you do that? You know, what works best? You have to cooler. What sort of knives will work? The questions were awesome, and you know that they're going to take that going forward. Well, what ended up happening out of that is that those people are definitely going to deer hunt again. But we also got some of those same adults into our program for the spring turkey hunts with the National Wild Turkey Federation, and now they've learned 2 different hunting sports. Now we've got a pretty good idea that these adults are going to be long-term hunters out there, and they're going to share that with their families going forward. So I think we've hit on some winning combinations out there.
And is it like a paid program? Like I have to pay for it?
In this particular case, the deer hunting was, but then with the Turkey Federation, that was a free program.
Because the Turkey Federation picked it up?
Yeah.
Nice job, NWTF.
Yeah.
So, and either one of you can answer this, but what would you say the Minnesota DNR is doing in terms of mentoring at any age that you think that the rest of the country could learn from, that you're something that you're proud of that maybe isn't being done somewhere else? Or
Well, I'll jump on this one. I think a couple of things that I don't think that there's very many programs out there that are doing this Learn to Hunt. Wisconsin is doing some of it. We've had
I haven't
upland
heard
bird
anything
hunts
like
for 8 or 9 years now. We've had waterfowl hunts for the kids, 12 to 15. It's an accumulation of all this stuff. But we've had over 2,000 kids and first-time turkey hunters now over the last 12 years that are now, I believe, going to be turkey hunters for the rest of their lives. Once they get that first gobble, like I was fortunate enough to mentor a young man from Ortonville this spring, and he's very, very shy and quiet. I mean, you had to pry a conversation out of him. And believe it or not, Jim, that's the way I was at his age too.
yeah, that's
I know it's hard to
believe, but okay.
but it's true. And we were fortunate enough to miss a turkey, didn't get a real close encounter on Friday. Saturday morning, no, it wasn't so good. And then late on Saturday morning, we went through the whole progression on the turkey hunt. And this young man shot his first turkey. It was actually his first hunt ever. Now, if you get that in your mind, if you remember your first turkey or your first big fish or your first fish or your first pheasant or your first goose, that kid's smile said everything. And he was out there with myself along with a guardian out there, and his parent couldn't make it out there for that. But I knew from that day forward that he's going to be somebody that's going to be into the outdoors for the rest of his life.
Now, obviously, you've had a lot of examples over the years of that type of. On one of those days when you come to work and you're maybe feeling a little down, and you start thinking of all the different.
Beating your head against the wall.
Yeah. What is that one experience that you can relate to us that you've had with someone that says, you know what I'm doing is worth it, and this is really worth. I mean, not to diminish what you just said, but I bet there's something that really sticks out that you've done over the years.
It's funny you should ask that because there is no one. There's
just accumulation.
It's an accumulation.
Experiences.
It's the kids that we have. We've got the Minnesota Bound Crappie Contest coming up, and last year we were able to get some kids from Big Brothers Big Sisters and Boys and Girls Clubs and from military families. When you see them get their first fish and they just light up, I mean, that's all it takes to keep me going, doing things like this. And whether I work for the DNR the rest of my life or if I have to. If something should happen tomorrow, I'll know that hopefully we made a difference out there. But there's no one person or one opportunity that's made it more special than the accumulation of all of them.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think no matter what kind of programming people like us might be involved with or you might be involved with, you just know there are those special times when someone in your audience or the whole audience has just made that connection with nature, whether it's through fishing or hunting or a citizen science kind of survey you might be working on. There are those instances where you just know people have finally made that connection with nature that they've been looking for, and they light up and they're so excited, and it's something they'll never forget.
And let's not forget how hopeful this is, having that connection with nature when they're getting false information from the media or from their friends or BuzzFeed or whatever on conservation or hunting as a whole. These people that are having these experiences be like, wait, whoa, no, like, that's not really how it is at all. I think, I grew up on a farm. You grew up on a farm?
I grew up on a farm.
Right next to a farm.
We'll cut him into the club.
No, I'm from a small town, and we're out there helping bale hay, and when we had a chance, we'd get out there and fish the Rum River and ride our bikes down to the river or down to my dad up in Ely.
But when you talk to someone who didn't grow up with that experience and how their viewpoint of the world is so different.
Yes.
And if we can just these little experiences even that you guys are offering kids and adults, whoever it may be, at least it gives them a glimpse into our world.
What I call the real world.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Well, that gets to the point of, where do your groceries come from? The grocery store, or do they really come from the farm? The butcher has to work on something. And do you want to have some crappies or sunfish or venison or pheasant or goose that's naturally growing, or do you want to get something that you don't know where it's coming from? And too many times right now, kids don't know where their food is coming from. They don't understand the way the environment is working, with the way water is connected with everything and the land is connected with everything. That is, I feel sorry for the Twin Cities kids right now because they're being overprotected in some cases by parents and families, and what we're not letting the kids do sometimes is just have kids be kids out there right now. They're too tied to their cell phones and their electronics, and even though that's what we're doing right now, and we want people to listen what we're talking about, you still have to get out there and experience it.
Right. They leave no child inside, right?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
So are there ways to actually combine the electronics with the outdoors? I mean,
or has it even been done successfully? Because I know it's been tried.
You're not going to take the electronics away from kids.
Yeah.
Is the DNR looking at maybe doing apps or something just to encourage more outdoor knowledge or involvement, that type of thing?
That's a really good question. There are all sorts of ways that technology can be incorporated into our outdoor experiences these days, whether it's through GPS, wayfinding kinds of apps, or, geocaching is going to be a huge thing in some circles.
Fishing electronics themselves, either whether it's the cameras or, the sonars, teaching kids how to use that, that's the same thing. It kind of engages them in electronics that'll help them fish.
Yeah, as well as other kinds of technology that are used for different kinds of survey work that folks can get involved with on a volunteer basis, perhaps. There are all kinds of ways that technology really enters into what we
But I don't think there is an app out there that successfully as doing what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities with the app, too.
I'm sure
there's-
people have created them, and I've seen them, but there's just no
You know,
way
I'm sure
can
there's
recreate.
apps that show you how to identify animal tracks and
Yep.
this and that. But
Oh,
I'm
sure.
But I'm talking about an app that actually tries to involve you in a certain project or something outdoors.
I don't think you can ever do away with you and me and us. It still takes the personal touch. You can go so far, whether you're on our DNR website, which has just a ton of information on it, but it still takes the hand holding in the field to learn the way the wind is blowing on your deer stand. You can get a picture of it on an app or something like that. And there's all kinds of those out there with weather apps and to understand deer hunting
Moon
and
phase
their
and all that,
moon phase and
yeah.
all that. But it really, the on the ground personal touch that you and I could give somebody, you can't replace that.
Interesting.
And again, it comes back to the parents, I think, and adults, leading the way with their own kids or other kids and showing them that it is safe to be outdoors and in the natural world, walking through the tall grass or through the woods. And, of course, there's safety precautions we should take with ticks and so forth these days. But that's with everything you do. You need to kind of know the rules. But, boy, the outdoors, it's just a great place to enjoy being a kid, really.
I can't help but think back when we're talking about technology here, before websites were even real common. And I remember I'd mentioned earlier I was doing some volunteering at the DNR, and back then I remember saying, the DNR really needs a website because everything that stuff was all new back in the late 80s or whatever that was.
Very
and
new.
And it just seems like as time goes on, there's apps, and now you're able to actually look at the fishing and hunting regulations on your smartphone, and that stuff all took time to develop, but it just it was a natural progression, and it makes it easier. There's no excuse now for not being out and enjoying some of that stuff.
Yeah, that Lake Finder app that we've got, it gives you all kinds of information, whether it be the size, the how far you can see into the water, the species, the sizes. I mean, there's just a wealth of information along with where to find these and where to find the fishing docks if you don't happen to have a boat. So there's lots of great information out there. You just have to look for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so with these mentoring programs, how does somebody get involved, and can you give a few examples of the programs that somebody would say, hey, I think I could do that?
Well, why don't you start with the Becoming Outdoors Woman and
Yeah.
family program.
We have a pretty extensive brochure here that outlines at least 150 programs that folks can participate in, whether there are some that are targeted at women, some that are targeted at families.
And that's just Minnesota right here?
This is just for Minnesota.
But
yes.
Become an Outdoors Woman is in every state? Or
is in
almost every state, I think.
Almost, if
Yeah.
not all.
Yeah.
And Minnesota's been very, very active in that program throughout the years. And so more programs to take advantage of here than just about anywhere else, really.
Yeah.
But
And
checking
they're
it
so
out
reasonable.
on the website.
Those
Yep.
programs are so reasonable. Like if you wanted to do it on your own, it would cost twice the money. Like they have kayaking trips in there. They have clay shooting outings where obviously they provide the guns. Like you don't need a gun even.
Well, you've been on some of them, correct?
I've been on some of them in Wisconsin. I did the Wisconsin Becoming Outdoors Woman winter trip, which was a
Okay.
3-day weekend at 20 below in northern Wisconsin. So that was cool. But I would love to do more. It's just timing, like everyone
Yes,
else. It's just
right.
timing. So,
Yeah,
but you
so-
meet such cool people.
Yeah. And so that's a great way to get introduced to some things you've maybe never done before and don't
Yeah.
have the equipment. Like you were saying, it's all right there for you if you enroll in one of the programs.
That's why I like having my hand held.
But if my wife wants to get involved in the outdoors, I just teach her.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to go to a class.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, though, one of the aspects to this is that we've done some of our survey work, and the women, they want to learn from somebody other
Than
their
husband.
Than their
Right,
husband.
I was just joking when I said
Right. But they are, because oftentimes you find that we're not as patient with our significant others as somebody from the outside would be. And so,
well, plus you want to screw up, or you want to make mistakes because that's how you learn, and you don't
Absolutely.
really want to make a mistake in front of someone you know.
Yeah, agreed. I agree.
Well, I don't mind making mistakes in front of you all the time. But, you know,
And vice versa.
Yeah,
right?
that's-
Well, you've grown much more than most. So
yes.
So that's the Becoming Outdoors Woman and Becoming Outdoors Family program, but there are all the various mentored hunting type of experiences that Mike is involved with.
yeah, and I mentioned those already with the kids and waterfowl hunts, and we've got great hunts like up at Camp Ripley that youth and their significant parent or guardian can go up there on. You know, those are all special times when you really can spend one-on-one time with a kid, and you can't replace that again. It's the time factor. You get we get too stuck on getting involved with sports these days, and we've forgotten about a lifelong sport, whether it be hunting, whether it be fishing, whether it be turkey hunting or pheasant hunting or grouse hunting, and all of the above. And you're going to see one of the things that if you check out like Pheasants Forever or the Rough Grouse Society or Minnesota Deer Hunters, they've all got great family and youth programs that are out there that you can really get involved with, and they're really reasonably priced, and highly recommend because they really take you from A to Z.
So do you coordinate with these different groups, or are you doing things mostly on your own?
We work with like the pheasant and the deer hunters. We do a lot of work together, but then again, they have their own programs too that we don't need to get involved with because really we're a small program here at the DNR, and so we can't get our hands
There's
involved
so
with
much
everything.
you guys want to do, I'm
Oh.
sure, where it's just time and resources. And
Exactly. So we have to kind of prioritize, and if somebody's got a good program that's running, we want them to take that program over, and so that we can maybe concentrate on some other things.
Now, Mike, when you came on board, were you the first one in this position? Did they have a coordinator before you?
In this particular position, I was the first in the nation. However, Ryan Bronson was the first retention coordinator, and then Jay Johnson after him, and he's still here too. So we're working, closely on these programs and hopefully taking them to the next level.
That's just it. We kind of have a capacity building role here, I think, being a state agency, and it really is up to the individual organizations that are out there as well as individual hunters and anglers themselves to kind of take on that role as being a mentor to someone else, no matter who it might be.
Yeah. A perfect example is we're working with Big Brothers Big Sisters right now on a monthly program. We've got them going out to Ron Scher's crappie contest coming up this spring. We've had them out several times ice fishing during the winter. We had them with the Waterfowl Association building woody houses. We're going to be taking up to Mille Lacs on a big launch fishing trip. And these are inner city kids that would not get that opportunity. So we're hopefully giving them that first just breath of fresh air out there, and hopefully they'll be able to take it again to that next level and share it with other kids that may not get that opportunity.
Well, that's certainly some great information and some great programs you guys are working on. I think we'll take a short break here, and then we'll come back and we're going to ask Mike about his feelings on pink camouflage right after this break.
This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking. From camp stoves to cast iron, from smokers to grills, Camp Chef will change the way you cook outdoors. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Whether you're serving breakfast in the backcountry or barbecue on the back patio, savor the simplicity with Camp Chef. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
welcome back to Back at the Lodge with Jim and Michelle, or Michelle and Jim.
However you want to look at it.
And we have a new guest with us now, Mr. Jim Leach, the Minnesota Director. What is your title, actually?
Director for the Division of Fish and Wildlife.
Director for the Division of Fish and Wildlife with Minnesota DNR.
Correct.
Okay. Everyone knows the Department of Natural
So
Resources.
basically, if it's hunting or fishing related, you pretty much control it.
Not control of it, just having an
Oversee it.
involvement.
Okay.
I don't think we control much.
But you've only been on the job for a few weeks.
Not even a few weeks. It was a week ago Monday.
Oh,
so
wow.
this is my second week on the job.
Are we your first official interview after your job?
Yes, I was interviewed
Woo-hoo!
prior to my arrival at DNR, but
I feel flattered.
Well,
This is pretty cool.
you guys put the initiative out to get out here.
There you go. There you go. Well, we teased a little bit about the pink camouflage, and I was just mostly joking about that. But, let's follow up with that, Mike. I mean, is that something that, to try and get more people involved in the outdoors, that is a legitimate thing that would have some sort of impact?
It's legitimate to you if you think it'll make you more comfortable in the outdoors.
That's a perfect answer.
It is, enforcement-wise, we're neutral on it, and it really is not that big a deal. And to some people, I think that the deer can't see it as well as what I've been told, and I don't even know that for a fact yet. But there's been some research on it. But if it makes you feel comfortable out there, and the other hunters and safety-wise can see you as well, then that'll be a decision that'll be made well above me. So, but again, there is no. Well, does pink make you want to go hunt? Pink camo, Michelle? Let me turn this around, because really, it really, if you feel comfortable, that's great. But
yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to go out as a hunter. I'm already a hunter, so I'm not going to go out and buy all new, obviously. But if I'm getting in, I don't know. I don't know.
If you need something new in a particular camo, then you might do it.
Maybe if it's cool.
But I think the most important part, though, with Jim, is you're looking for. I think women are looking for clothes that fit them, and that's somewhere, and that doesn't always happen out there in the field.
Right.
Well, let me ask another question on this one, Michelle. Again, directed back at you.
No, okay, I'm getting asked questions now.
What would you do for your daughter?
Grilled.
What are you going to buy for your daughter when you take her hunting? Pink or orange?
Probably pink. Probably, yeah.
Well, I assume this is something that some legislator kind of initiated, or is the DNR encouraging it in any way?
No, I don't believe we are,
Jim.
Jim.
On it? Is that
I think we're neutral on it. I think there's application for it, as Mike said. If it encourages more young women or young men to take up and go hunting a bow or a gun, we're very supportive of that. Recruitment and retention of the hunting community is very important to DNR. And however we do it, if it's as simple as a color change, we're very supportive.
Awesome.
Well, Jim, you're one of the leaders for hunting and fishing in one of the best states in the country to participate in those activities. What do you see as some of your big challenges here upcoming in this new role?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for all of us is recruitment and retention. Getting young people involved with it. All of us as parents know what our kids are involved with, and there's so many facets that can take their time away from the outdoor recreation community that filling their time really has to be an individual interest or a parental interest. But then we have to get to communities and cultures that really don't have the parents that grew up in hunting and fishing, and encourage them to do that. And we as a conservation community and a hunting community really have to look at that next generation of anglers and hunters to fill the ranks.
Right.
So it comes back to Mike holding one of the most important jobs at the DNR again, then. Is that what it comes down to?
Well, mine is a title and a position. It's no more important than any one of the hunters or fisher people to your listening community. We all have a role to play in it. It boils down to one-on-one. We have to get out there as hunters and anglers.
That's the best retention and recruitment tool is one-on-one.
And a position and title does nothing to do with recruitment and retention. It's up to all of us as individuals. And I'll mention this past weekend I was turkey hunting. I took my daughter-in-law, who has never hunted before, and then on Sunday I took my nephew's son, an 8-year-old. So I'm trying to do my part. How are your listeners trying to do their part?
Right, that's a good point. Well, I took my 8-year-old daughter last Friday, and we got a turkey, so that was her first experience. So I'm trying to do my part.
Good for you.
You actually called the turkey in.
I did, and I was telling Michelle over lunch, my daughter proceeded to scold me after I shot because she thought the gun was too loud, and I said, the fact that there's a turkey flopping out there doesn't seem to have any importance to you?
Yeah.
No, it was, Dad, you should have warned me that you were
There
going
was
to
gonna
shoot.
be a big boom.
And I said, what do you expect when I put the gun up to my shoulder and we're out in the turkey blind?
That was a teaching moment.
It was a teaching moment.
It was obviously the first time she was with you.
She'd been out before, but we'd never shot a turkey.
Or a deer.
And part of that reason is when you have a little one that talks too much, you don't get to see a lot of those type of critters close by. But as she gets older, she's able to.
Control it.
But would you trade those moments in that you had with her, though?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean,
To see a deer on
even
the
though we
ground.
laugh about the fact that I got scolded for the noise being too loud, I mean, that'll be something I remember the rest of my life. Shooting the turkey was great, but just sitting next to her, having her go through the emotions of everything, that was what really meant the whole experience to me. And I think it does to her, too, even though she isn't probably at an age that can articulate it. But as she gets older and she holds on to some of those memories, I think it'll impact how she grows up.
That's too bad. I wish my dad would have remembered or thought of that. My dad never took me out hunting. I was the youngest of 4 children.
Well, if you've ever hunted with Michelle, you'll know she has a propensity to talk too much.
Yeah.
And you only have to take her out once to realize that if you want to be serious about it, that I shouldn't say that. She's actually a pretty good hunting partner. But she does like to talk. That's why she's
So that's
my...
why we have a podcast. All right. Well, Jim, what were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
All right. I was just going to talk about your top priorities. We kind of got into it with recruitment retention, but you did do a Q&A before you started with Dave Orrick of the Pioneer Press back in March, and you said then your top priorities was obviously the walleye fisheries situation, if you will.
On Mille Lacs.
Yeah, and then elk and moose, declining populations, whitetail declining populations. So this is about a month ago that you made that interview. Any updates, I guess, now that you're actually in the office?
Sure. Mille Lacs Lake is going to take up a lot of DNR's time because it's a top priority for the department. From the commissioner on down to our fisheries chief and our field staff. The pheasant plan, front and center on prairie conservation and doing things for pheasants in the farmland portion of the state. The deer plan, Minnesota DNR is committed to doing a statewide deer plan. We're waiting for the audit from the Office of the Auditor. Once we see that, I think we will get busy in seeking advisory committee members.
What do you expect to see from that forecast or from
I'm
that
sorry?
audit? What do you expect to see from that audit?
The audit?
Yeah.
Really, your guess is almost as good as mine.
Okay.
You never know what to expect. I'm sure they're looking at how we assess deer populations in permit areas as well as statewide, and if there's any room for improvement. I think what we're doing is very similar to what other states are doing adjacent to us, and in many cases probably more rigorous.
Okay.
But, there's controversy on an animal like deer hunting. Some people want more, some people want less. Some people want big antlers, some people just want to see a deer. So it's our job. We know we're never going to please every hunter or non-hunter that's concerned about deer or any wildlife species. We just have to try
You have
to
to do
do the
what's
best
right.
based on the science and
Right.
the political winds out there as well.
Right.
That's got to be quite a challenge to balance, too, because when you've got a group that wants to see changes, because perhaps their science is showing there's a better way of doing things, versus people that have been hunting deer, let's say, for quite a few years, like me, and just wants to have the same experience they remember when they were younger. Sometimes those things conflict, and that's got to be hard to balance that out because we all pay the same amount for our licenses, but we want something different from the experience.
I think the big thing that I would say is give DNR the benefit of the doubt. We're not in there for any one group. We're trying to do the best by all of the people in Minnesota. And that's, as you mentioned, a very divergent group. There's common themes that everybody wants, abundant wildlife and abundant fisheries, But we're in a changing environment right now. What we experienced as young people probably is not ever going to be replicated again because the environment is changing. And to say we can maintain a static environment by management, we try our best to do it through management, but as we all see when we travel the countryside, the landscape is changing. We're losing grasslands, we're losing wetlands, forested areas. For us to maintain a population at a level that we grew up with probably is going to be tough, and that's where the outside funding comes in with the legacy amendment. Those dollars are being used to provide some of that habitat that we lost, both in the prairie region, the transition zone, and the forested areas. Streams, lakes, all of the other habitats that I mentioned are being benefited by that. But, we lost a lot of these habitats over a 50-year, 100-year period. We're not going to gain them back any one year. And for the public to be cognizant of that and be patient to see that incremental change moving that needle in the direction of conservation, that's what we need.
It's what kills me, what gets me, is when people who complain about the loss of habitat or they may not be hunters or just conservation as a whole, and they drive their Priuses with their moose plates or whatever they have over here in Minnesota, and they go to their brand new home built in 2015 on farmland that used to be farmed for the last 50 years. So you tell me what role you're playing in staying and building your brand new home using all these you know how much materials is created in building homes in these new developments? Because I live in the suburbs of St. Paul, and it's just insane. Every year I see loss of farmland. And that changes our environment, like you said. Like, our waterways are changed, our reservoirs are changed. I mean, we're already struggling with 3M's infractions into our aquifers out here in the eastern suburbs. And it just kills me. Like, why can't you just buy an older house? I live in a 25-year-old house. It's awesome. I don't need a brand new home. You live in a 100-year-old house.
Well, it was until we remodeled it a few years
whatever.
ago. But yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Am I getting my point across?
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's that incremental change that we're seeing in the environment. But you have to realize
But they're a part of it. But that's what I'm saying. Like, they're a part of it. They're a part of that change because they decided they needed to buy a $500,000 house on farmland that used to be farmland. And then they complain when the deer come in the garden. Then they complain about it because the deer are in their garden.
Well, I mean, I think change is just part of nature, like you're saying, Jim. I mean, my family's lived on the same farm for 160 years. Now, obviously, I haven't been there that long, but in the 50-plus years that I've been there, I've seen a lot of changes just on that farm. When I was growing up, I'd heard of coyotes way out west somewhere. I'd never seen coyotes before. We had red fox, gray fox. Now, seeing fox is pretty rare. It's all coyotes. I saw pheasants galore. I don't see much pheasants now. But I never saw turkeys, but now all I see is turkeys everywhere. I just think that a lot of things in the outdoors, things change with time, and part of it's due to management. There were turkeys that were released there from Missouri not far away, and over time they spread. But, I guess that's what makes the outdoors so interesting, too, is it's not always the same, and you have to kind of change with how the conditions and what animals exist and all that kind of stuff. And I would assume the same is true with lakes. The lakes probably don't stay the same either.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. We as humans think that we can see these changes and document them, but
within our lifetime.
Right.
Yeah, and
but
you don't.
We really don't. And they're really subtle changes that a wildlife species or a fish species picks up on immediately.
And they adapt.
And they adapt, or they don't adapt, and then we have threatened or endangered species or extinction. But that change is very subtle from year to year, from decades, and even over a millennium. We don't see that in our generation, and from one generation to the next, that information really isn't transferred. I mean, if you look at pictures, and I don't know where your farm is, Jim, but you look at western Minnesota, pictures back in the 20s and 30s, there wasn't a tree out in western Minnesota. You look at it now, and there's trees. Would generations know that unless they look back 100 years? Probably not. So those are the subtle changes that we see in the environment that, people don't really pick up on because we don't live long enough. Mm-hmm. But those are the things that really affect wildlife and fish populations. We're seeing that in Mille Lacs Lake. We're seeing that lake change because of a changing environment. Can it sustain populations at past levels? We don't know. We're evaluating that right now. But we have a citizens advisory committee that's involved with Mille Lacs Lake right now, and all the major issues, we're going to try to get citizens involved with this so they see the same things that we're seeing. And it's not a black box theory that DNR is pulling something out of a black box and making a decision. We're trying to evaluate it and make the best decision for the entire population of Minnesota.
I know this isn't probably a fair question, but I'll preface it that way. From your perspective, what is more challenging, managing fish or wildlife or managing the people that go after them?
Well, I think people are our number one resource, and from within an agency, it's the staff that I have the privilege to work with. But on the exterior, if we as a DNR and as a state agency don't have public support for what we do, then we're insignificant and not relevant to the population of Minnesota. So we have to be relevant to them, and the way we become relevant is get them involved with what we do. I mean, it's their resource. We have the privilege of managing it for the public in Minnesota. So I think DNR's idea of these advisory committees on most of the priority things that we're involved with is just the right way to do business. Get the public involved.
Is that something, Jim, that is newer more recently than it was 2-3 decades ago?
Well, you got to remember, I'm here about 10 days ago is when I started, so I can't give you that perspective from a decade ago.
I guess from my perspective, when I was starting out in the outdoors, I don't recall the DNR really surveying as much as they do now.
To get public opinion?
Yeah, to see just where everybody's feeling about stuff. And I was just curious if the DNR is taking a greater emphasis on gauging how the public, what type of an experience they want and all that kind of stuff than they did. Because it seemed like when I first started out, it was more like, here's the experience you're going to get, and here's the date you can start it, and here's how much it's going to cost you, and this kind of stuff. But it just seems like as times there's been more focus groups and more listening sessions and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's the right thing to do. Repeating what Jim said, and we've got some people right down the hall here that could answer that question rather than me trying to pull something out of the hat at this point in time. But I've got 8 years into the DNR, and I think I'm with you, Jim. I never saw it that much. But certainly it is a high priority right now to be a good listening post. And you've seen the changes that have happened just because we've heard things back. Mille Lacs Lake is a perfect example, and the change of the not being able to use live bait. We listened to the advisory group that was out there and made the change. And there's also things going on, the same thing, I believe, on the deer hunting side of things in some locations. So, we're listening. And that didn't always happen in the past, but it's a new regime and it's a new day.
Right, and I think that's good. I mean, I think your clientele wants to believe that they're being listened to. I mean, I think that's important in today's world, that people like to know that how they feel about certain aspects of what they're passionate about. They want to know that,
transparency.
That the DNR in Minnesota is doing just as good a job as they are in Iowa or Wisconsin or wherever else.
Right.
Listening to those concerns.
Right. And that was another thing, actually, Jim, you said in your Q&A that Minnesota is well known to have I believe, I'm paraphrasing, but well known for having a good Department of Natural Resources. Could you expound upon that? Because you didn't really do it in the Q&A, and I was like, really? We're known for Is it just because of the activities that we've done, or?
Well, I'll go back to my previous job. I was a refuge supervisor with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, a federal agency, and I have had the privilege in that job of working with many state agencies, and Minnesota by far was light years ahead of some states. Very good biological focus of their programs, good biologists, good administrators in the jobs that needed to have fish and wildlife administrators. So, from that vantage is what I was really talking about.
Gotcha.
Now that I'm here, I see it firsthand. I have section chiefs in wildlife and fisheries that are extremely good biologists and understand the politics behind it and know how to manage people. And the way we DNR get things done is through our people, but it's also working with the local communities. And I think we have a great cadre. Some people in local areas are going to have problems with an area fisheries manager and an area wildlife manager, but it's not. Sure, you're going to have professional disagreements at times, but don't make it personal or don't demonize the individual. There's going to be differences. And we get paid to manage for all of Minnesotans, just not for one group of individuals.
I think that's important, that statement right there, because I have a lot of friends out west, too, who, they need to have controlled burns. And because if you don't have controlled burns, you can have a real fire start to take down everything. And people will sue the city or the county or whoever it is or the state, because the controlled burn comes up to their property or whatever, and so then they don't have the controlled burn. Well, then, lightning strikes, your whole place could burn down.
In addition to reducing the fire hazard, if you don't burn prairies, what you're going to see now is trees taking over the prairies of western Minnesota, and that's what you're seeing. DNR,
which affects our wildlife.
That affects all your grassland birds.
And
pheasants,
people
ducks.
don't understand, there's a cause and effect for everything that we do as a human. I guess that's what I was trying to say about buying the brand new home on agricultural property. There's a cause and effect for buying that home. There's a cause and effect for burning and not burning. And I don't think people are, because we're so me oriented. It's all about me. So as a DNR director, I bet you're trying to can you people look at it from 30,000 feet, right? And not have such tunnel vision.
That's our challenge, and that's what we have to do, and that's what we get paid to do, is work with people to develop and make them understand different perspectives. Their perspective is important, but there's a bunch of other perspectives out there as well.
Right.
Well, Jim, our time is kind of drawing to a close here, but I'm gonna ask you one more question.
And I have one question that you can or don't have to answer, because I
Guys,
can edit it
Put me
out.
on the spot, aren't you?
Yeah, because I can edit it
Flip
out.
a coin. Who gets to ask?
No,
the
you can
last
ask
one?
but I'm just saying I can edit mine because
All right.
he doesn't have to answer it. So.
I know some of these questions have been tough to deal with because you're new and you don't have a lot. But let's fast forward to your retirement someday, Jim. And I assume someday you plan to retire.
Someday.
What do you want people to say that you really achieved while you were here during the time you spent at the DNR? What's that one hope that when somebody mentions your name, say, this is what we got because of Jim?
I will. My care of my legacy is less important than what I want for the state and for what I want for the DNR employees that I have the privilege to work with. I guess if there was a legacy that would be important to me, it would be listening to field staff and doing right by field staff. We get our direction from the governor and from the commissioner's office, and we're going to follow that direction, and there's all types of things that we can do for fish and wildlife conservation within that context that you gave me as far as a legacy. But I always, and from the position that I came with, field staff opinions were very important to me, and I hope that's something that DNR field staff remember.
Well, it sounds like you haven't forgot your roots then.
Well, no, I mean that's where the rubber meets the road,
Right.
is in the field.
Right.
We here have the privilege of representing their interest and doing right by them, but really, if we're going to do conservation, it happens at the field level.
Yep. Good answer. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. And it's been a great talking with both of you, both Mike and Jim.
Yes, thank you for taking time out of your day.
Yes.
Your first 100 days, first 14,
days.
first 10
First 10
days.
days. So, anyhow, we'll wrap it up.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you
for
both.
listening.
You've been listening to Back at the Lodge, a podcast hosted by Jim Broughton and Michelle Sherman. Please join them again next time for another episode as they discuss a variety of topics pertaining to the great outdoors.